Hello, everyone. Thank you those who could join yesterday when we did the webinar to go over the Wednesday email that was sent with the template and other attachments. Those who couldn't join, this is a brief overview of what we went over last night. If you have any other questions, please let us know. As a reminder, you get 6 hours to write these plans at the supplemental pay rate. Please submit those timesheets to Claire O'Malley and myself when you are completed your 6 hours and your plans are complete. And also, please write at the top COVID plans so that we can get these into the correct budget code. All right. I'm going to go over each template that was sent, each attachment in the email that was sent to you, basically an annotated version of each one. If you have any other further questions, please let us know. So I'm going to share my screen and go over each document now. So the first document is the actual template. This is a template. It looks similar to the one in the spring, but as a reminder, and what I wrote in the email is that this template covers both phase 2 and 3 of the board approved health and safety plan and reopening plan, which we're currently opening in the hybrid model, phase 2. But this includes phase 2 and 3, as well as the recoupment services, which we'll go over in just a little bit. This template is simply a template and should not be changed, some of these sections, and then you'll just individualize it for your students in most of the sections. All right. The first part is a notice to the parents regarding why we're writing these. We believe, and as we've stated to you, that unless we're in phase 1, which is back to normal, all students in front of us daily, that we cannot implement the FAPE that is in the current IEP. We're calling this more circumstantial FAPE, which would be in phase 2 and 3, hybrid and all virtual. And the program for each child can look different based on those two platforms. All right. So this notice goes over why we're doing it. And just as a heads up to you, the other option that some districts are doing is having their case managers rewrite every IEP to match the platform that they're in. So for instance, if we move into phase 3, all virtual, they're holding IEP meetings for their students, revising those IEPs and issuing a NORAP. When a district moves into phase 2, hybrid, they would have to do the same thing. By writing this one time, it allows you to have flexibility with moving in and out of those phases throughout the school year. So we believe, 1, the FAPE is different, which this document will outline, and 2, it saves you a lot of time with meetings and NORAPs when we change from phase to phase, okay? So that first section stays the same. The second section is phase 2, which is the hybrid learning model. Each of these sections I'm going to go over briefly, but again, reach out if you have questions. The first part is parental input. On your behalf, we will be sending a parental input form to all special education parents next week after we have the webinar for them. And what that does is allows them to give input on how their students did over the last few months with the online virtual platform. I will show you the input form in a second, but those parents will get the form next week and then have until August 31st to submit those forms to you. The assigned case manager of each student should reach out ahead of time over the next few weeks, introduce yourself, let them know that you are the case manager so that they know who to submit it to. The input form, if it is not received by August 31st, you will write this statement. A parental input form was sent to the parent. However, to date, no additional input has been received. Again, send out a couple reminders for the parents, but this allows them to give input, which, as you know, is required for any IEP as we're developing it. That is done once, by the way. That does not have to be copy and pasted into phase 3, all virtual at the bottom. In phase 2, the hybrid, knowing that we will have students in front of us at the elementary level AM or PM, unless they're full-time, which we'll talk about, and in the secondary level A and B day, every other day, unless they're full-time. The educational service section should look similar to how it did in the spring and should only be applicable to those sections the child has a need and services in. So for instance, if a child is receiving reading support, you may write something along the lines of, child will receive 2 45-minute sessions of research-based curriculum surrounding the areas of decoding and phonics, something like that. If a child does not have writing support or math support, you would delete those boxes. But in this section, you want to outline in that hybrid model, knowing that you're going to have them half the time for most students, what services you will be providing. And again, I would reference the plans in the spring. For the case managers who are receiving those students, those are uploaded into PowerSchool for your reference. Keep in mind, in hybrid model, you should be doing more because they're in person with you than the all virtual. All right. For the second or the next section of phase 2, you are going to have goals. We are not asking you to track all the goals in the child's IEP in phase 2 or phase 3, but you must track some goals. What you will do is at minimum choose one goal per goal area. So if the child has goals in reading, writing, and math, let's say they have 3 reading, 2 writing, and 2 math, you will select at minimum 1 reading, 1 writing, and 1 math goal that you can progress monitor. All right, you will put those goals, copy and paste into this section. Notice it does not have frequency in here because your frequency may change with progress monitoring. But again, you will be collecting data on some of those goals. Some of you who like to or know that you can track more goals, you can certainly add more than 1, but we're requiring you to have at least 1 goal per area. Any area that does not apply, social emotional, for instance, the child doesn't have any behavior, social emotional goals, you'll just delete that section. Okay. The next section is specially designed instruction. In a hybrid format, the child is in front of you half the time. You should have more accommodations that look similar to the IEP. Please do not go back and copy all the SDI from the IEP into this section, but you should certainly have more in this section in the hybrid model, phase 2, than you would have in phase 3, all virtual. They may look different, so make sure you keep that in mind and rewrite as necessary. The placement should look the same as the IEP. You will simply check what they're receiving, learning support, autistic support, life skills, etc. The placement section then, instead of writing the access or amount of time with the classroom and the amount of time in the curriculum, we changed that to schedule and sessions, all right? We wrote out the schedule lines for you, the statements that you would include, which is applicable to each of the students depending on what they're getting. For instance, for elementary, if a child is not going to be attending full day, which again we'll get into, you would write something like this. Student will participate on an AM, PM schedule, reporting to in-person instruction in the AM and participating in virtual instruction in the PM. If they're attending full day, it may sound something like this. The IEP team has determined, based on the needs listed in the IEP, that the student will participate in a full day of instruction. A schedule will be provided outlining the regular education and special education classes the student will participate in. For secondary, those statements are there as well. Make sure you choose the one that is applicable. For the sessions then, you're going to take that service section at the top, and just like you do in an IEP, you will list it in this special education section of this document. And you'll basically outline what you wrote in there. For instance, I put an example, 45 minutes 2 times a week of research-based instruction on decoding and phonics, something like that. You would include things like 30 minutes of speech and language support 1 time a week. All right, you're going to outline the services that each child is provided. Parent acknowledgement, you will write the parent's name and the date it was provided. Again, these are due by September 4th for all of the students. They must be sent to the parent. Phase 3 then, you will complete this for when we move into the virtual. This is pretty much the same plan that was already created for the students in the spring. Again, those are uploaded onto PowerSchool for your new caseload, so I would reference those and copy and paste anything that's applicable. We are encouraging you, and since you've received more training, to provide more virtual instruction in this phase because we are more equipped to do so. So you had extensive training over the spring and this summer, and definitely should be able to provide more services. Again, all virtual. Any sections that do not apply, get rid of them. All right, so the child doesn't get social emotional services, you would delete this. Again, the goals, they could mirror phase 2 goals. I will forewarn everyone that when you are working virtually, that you most likely will not be able to do observational goals. So you may want to tweak those goals for that area or simply get rid of them. Again, a minimum of 1 goal per area. SDI for this section, again, it should look similar to the spring. Things that may look different in phase 3 than in phase 2 would be para support. Maybe the student is getting additional para support or less para support, or the para support looks different because you can't do things like hand over hand and different prompt hierarchies. You will write appropriate accommodations for the all virtual phase 3 platform. All right. Again, parent acknowledgement with the parent's name and the date. The recoupment section you're going to leave blank for now. As a heads up, we will go over this with you on September 3rd when we have special education with us for training, and Tracy will describe what these are. This is a PDE requirement for students who need to get recoupment services in order to recoup what they've lost since March, the March closure. Again, leave this blank for all of your students until we go over it. So that is the template. And again, that must be completed for all students, regardless of the parent selecting an all virtual model for their child. I'm going to go over now the instructions, which is how you notify the parents of this plan. All right. The instructions at the top, which we're sending the email, are listed there. Please follow them and watch this video in order to complete them appropriately. When you are done and when you send these to parents by September 4th, you are going to include this email, this statement in the email to parent. Please do not change this statement as it is the notice of what we're providing. You will simply copy and paste this statement and attach the template for each of your students. Please also CC Jenny and I, or simply forward each of them to us so that we can save them and have Gina upload to PowerSchool. If the parent then, after this email, is selecting virtual, we know they're already selecting virtual, we have that list. You are going to send a follow-up email, which we will give to you in a little bit. And that's going to simply state, we understand you're choosing virtual, therefore you will be following phase 3 of the plan. Okay, and that's just to document our faith that we've offered and their refusal and election of the all virtual. The next document that was sent to you is the parental input form. Again, this will be sent to all parents next week, and they will be submitting those to you by August 31st. You'll see on here that the feedback is relevant to the virtual instruction. So for instance, as you reflect on March to June 2020 closure, what do you see your child's strengths as it relates to virtual instruction? Okay, you'll have these for reference, and then once you get this back, you'll simply copy and paste it into that first section under parental input. The last document that was shared with you is the considerations for full day. This was reviewed with building administrators, and you should be working with them to determine what students are attending full day or every day based on the needs of the IEP. We're giving this to you as a consideration, and this will also be presented to the board next week just to make sure it's clear for everyone, and Jenny and I will go over it with the parents at the webinar. This document is not the end-all be-all, but we are asking that you follow it as closely as possible to make the determination if a child is attending, especially a child is attending all day, full time. The first determination, and you'll mark a yes or no in each of these lines, is whether the student is in the Armstrong group. The Armstrong group is a group of students that have one of the following: autism, pervasive developmental disorder, serious emotional disturbance, severe intellectual disability, degenerative impairments and mental involvement, and severe multiple disabilities. As a heads up, if you make the ESY determination by February 28th, that means that that group of students is the Armstrong group. The rest of the students are, the qualification or determination must be made by the end of March, and they would not fall into this group. Keep in mind these words: serious, severe, degenerative, severe. It is not all students with autism or all students with emotional disturbance. It has to be pervasive. It has to be serious, okay? Number 2, does the student attend a district's low incidence classroom? That would be a WANE, RMS, and or RHS, or RHS, excuse me. Does the child take the PASA assessment? Does the student have difficulty assessing virtual instruction from home due to physical impairment or multiple disability? This would include students in wheelchairs or serious physical ailments. And the last one for all of you to consider is, does the child have a history, per the progress reports, of difficulty with regression or recoupment? Okay, consider the past ESY qualification. Then for elementary, and this is where it gets different from elementary and secondary. Is the student's Penn data as it relates to the IEP, as it currently states in the IEP, listed as full-time or supplemental learning support? So that would be 0 to 79% outside the regular education classroom. And the last consideration for elementary, if the student's Penn data lists the child as itinerant, does the student receive replacement instruction? And that is programming separate and different from the gen ed curriculum during that IME block. Again, this is not students who just have reteach or pre-teach in their IEPs. This would be things like Read 180, System 44, Math 180, Wilson, Linden Bell, LLI, all of those programs that require an extensive amount of time. All right. Secondary, you need to look a little differently. You need to look at the ASC and advisory classes. And again, it must be replacement instruction, not just free teach or pre-teach. All right. So those are the documents that were sent to all of you. Again, if you have questions, please ask Jenny or I via email or phones, and we will certainly get back to you. All of these plans are due by September 4th to your parents, and you must send them to Jenny and I before you send to the parents. You can also CC Gina so that she can upload them to PowerSchool. Thank you so much.